in light of the recent events of the week or two ago, Seth has volunteered to join us and participate a little in the helping us get through this next phase. So appreciate Seth for your continued assistance on this.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see. So call to order. So the building committee, let's see, time is, I think we have a quorum. Time is 5:32 a.m. August 7th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Item 2, public comments. Is there anyone, Raquel, is there anyone else?
Yes, Tim Manco, but I'm not sure if he's, related to the project or not.
Okay, yeah, does he have his hand raised? If he,
No, he doesn't, no.
okay, Tim, if you want to come in public comment, feel free to join. We have a second time later on. Failing to see a raised hand, we'll continue to item number 3, approval of minutes, July 17th, 2023. I don't know if everyone had a chance to review the minutes. If anyone is comfortable with if someone's comfortable making a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I believe that was unanimous. Moving up to item number 4. Well, I guess first of all, before we go to that item, just I assume many of you were in the room the other day, on Monday night, 2 weeks ago, where we there was a public meeting in the town form of government. And the $2.4 million for the 4 classrooms was turned down by a fairly significant majority. So we do need to figure out what the path forward is. I think the town selectmen are talking to the bond council about the ramifications. What do we do move forward? I think the Board of Education is meeting later this month with some recommendations. We are going to have to try to find a path forward with the $2.4 million. In terms of the classrooms continuing to be in, we need clarification from the bond council whether we can with that after that defeat. But I just, I would, if Seth, if you could weigh in on the priorities relative to the 4 classrooms, relative to the Board of Ed. I know you're going to meet later to formally make a position, but I just want to kind of get the ball rolling, inform what we do as a committee moving forward.
Sure thing. Thank you. And this will be quick. Basically, the Board of Ed has not had a chance to meet. We meet only once a month in the summer, and we're not meeting again until the 22nd of this month. So I can't represent what the board will be doing because it'll require a vote. But what I can say is it's going to be the recommendation of the administration, and it's going to be my recommendation as well, that we consider prioritizing the 4 additional classrooms over any other bid alternates that we had considered. The board will need to look at that and come up with a final recommendation, but that is most likely going to be what happens. It's most important that the building be able to accommodate the students and the student enrollment. And then, secondarily, we can worry about kitchen, and tertiary is the consideration of, for example, radiant floors. So I think that's how we're going to be moving forward. But, stay tuned till our vote on August 22nd. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. And obviously, okay, so that's, we'll work on trying to find other sources of revenue, other things to take out even before. I know we've already gone through a couple of cuts of this, but we'll, on the assumption that that's going to be the recommendation from the Board of Ed, and also that the bond council says we can still do this and we find the 2.4 somewhere else. I think that's kind of our marching orders right now, because we obviously, the ed spec is our Bible. So it's still in the ed spec until otherwise taken out. So.
And Graham, I can, during the OPM section, I can highlight some of the items the team has been discussing to help get ahead on the 2.4. So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay, good. Thanks. With that, moving on to item 4, architects update. So Justin, I assume you're,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the building committee. A fairly brief update, but just as a point of clarification, we can probably get into it when Adam gives his part of the presentation on additional potential value management items. Right now, those 4 additional classrooms are not part of any add alternate or alternate proper. They're in the base scope of our drawing set. So I think that we'll need to reconcile any of those decisions and discussions with a deadline that's rapidly approaching here.
yeah,
So
we recognize it. If the decision
Yeah.
ultimately is made to take the classrooms out, it's a redesign effort and a delay in the impact. So we'll,
just
yeah, understood. Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
I put it on the record that if
Okay.
we just ultimately decide after the 22nd to take out the classrooms, that's not a simple task. I think most
Okay.
people understand it, but we understand that.
okay. Thank you.
Right? And all
Um,
that's right. And we, in the interim prior to that meeting, we probably want to discuss the potential ramifications of that if that decision was made. Unlikely as it may be, what that would do to the schedule and the budgets, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Not a problem.
yeah.
I just want, because that was a item that was brought up, I just wanted to make sure that we had some clarity with respect to that discussion. So in any event, obviously more important things to discuss a little bit later in the meeting. So I'll try and be brief. Just want to recap some of the meetings that we've held and some of the items that we have moved forward. So we've been having some periodic meetings with members of the district as well as members of the town of Madison. We've held a security review meeting on July 20th, a meeting with the authorities having jurisdiction. So fire, health department, building official on July 27th. We held a meeting last week with the principal just to clarify some classroom storage related cubby quantities, that type of stuff. We have also attended the P&Z meeting on July 20th, in which at that meeting, they closed the public hearing. So the reason why we did not move that application, or they did not render a decision on that application, is because we need to resolve the inland wetlands application, which is slated for 7:00 this evening. So the IWWC is this week. Planning and zoning will be next week. We do not foresee any major issues. Both approvals will be conditional based on the standard conditions within the town. The only other thing that I want to mention is that we are moving forward with 2 code modifications. One is a fairly standard code modification, which is a plumbing fixture count. This is one mod that we do on every single one of our schools, which is it's a request for relief of the required amount of toilet fixtures, lavatories, et cetera, based on the total occupant load, and right sizing those to the actual enrollment. So building codes require us to take an occupant load, assuming simultaneous use of every space within the building, which tends to inflate our overall occupant loads, that we are then compelled to provide a quantity of toilets and sinks, et cetera, that are based on that occupant load. Standard practice within the state to request relief from that requirement to go with the actual student enrollment plus faculty. So that is something that we have issued. It first needs to take a step at the Madison Building Department and then go to the state building official for approval. So that's Code Mod 1. Code Mod 2 is simply a request, and this has been done on comparable elementary school, where we're asking them to disregard the area that is in the second floor of the gymnasium, to not be an aggregation in our overall main floor total area, which would then allow us not to have a firewall separation in a portion of our building. So we think that this could be the opportunity for some additional value management within the building, but also seems to be a pretty straightforward code modification. We spoke about this in our AHJ meeting, and ultimately sounded like we had the support of the town of Madison for moving it forward. So I know I did promise to be brief, and I went a little bit longer in that explanation of the code mods, but that's more or less what we have been working on. In addition, as we'll get into it, related to issuance of the phase 1 early procurement data. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.
I have
Any
a quick
questions?
question, actually.
Yep. Yep.
For the architects, we got the link today for the walkthrough, and I tried numerous times and it still won't load for me. And I even tried on other devices too. So I'm not sure what the deal is. I mean, it
Okay.
like quickly loads once and then it like just freezes. And then it says, do you want to wait or you want to get out? It's like, it's not giving me enough. Do I have to just wait longer and I'm not patient? Or is there a glitch there? Do you know?
I had the same issue when I tried on 2 different browsers.
Okay, then I'm not
Okay.
alone. Thank you, Tina.
All right. Well, we're seeking technical support from Enscape as well to try and
Okay,
figure out where some of this glitch is in the distribution. And if we cannot land on this, we're going to have to figure out another way to provide this information to you, either
Okay.
with a Zoom meeting where we are navigating everything, or in-person meeting. Sharon, we promised this and we need to follow through on it. So my
okay,
apologies.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah.
Got it. Any other questions for Justin from the committee? Great, thanks. Thank you. Number 5, construction managers update.
All right,
Nick, yep.
good evening. I will keep this one brief. We did receive the phase 1 package from Justin's team over at Cole Ronan and from Banesh. As far as the switchgear goes, it's I'd like to say it's somewhat straightforward, but there are some things to work through on our end regarding the ATS switches, the CT metering cabinets, and a couple other components, and then also determining how far down the line we want to go with it. We were pretty specific in what we wanted the drawings to show in terms of how far down the line, how many panels, how far down the one line we wanted to go. Cole Ronan provided that just as we said, but we're just making sure that it makes sense to buy those. We don't want to buy more than is needed, but also don't want to buy most of it and then have a couple components be long lead items. That would defeat the whole purpose. So we understand where we're at with the budget. And, I'd love to buy every panel on the job and every transformer on the job now, but that probably doesn't make sense given where we're at. So that covers the switchgear and primarily and the generator as well. On the HVAC side, the direct outdoor air unit, we're working through a couple of questions on our end regarding the controls. So all these rooftop units have prepackaged control systems that get tied in with other control systems by other manufacturers of other equipment. So we're just making sure that that we're not getting left in a situation where we struggle to connect those different systems, because Trane is the basis of design for the direct outdoor air unit. Doesn't necessarily mean Trane would be what was carried in the low bid, but it also doesn't mean that we're going to get condensers from Trane or that we're going to get any of the other equipment from Trane. So we just want to make sure that we're covered on the control side. We'll have a few questions in the next couple of days to iron out with Cole or Ronan. So we'll probably jump on a call with them. I'll reach out to you, Justin, and keep you in the loop on that. And the rest of the time right now, we're just looking through the drawings for VE and VM opportunities, not specific to phase 1, obviously, but to the rest of the job. So that's all I have for tonight.
Great, thanks, Nick. Any questions for Nick? Nick, do we have a proprietary control spec for the town, or what? How do we
I do not believe we do. We're operating on the assumption that it is not a proprietary spec. There were a couple of proprietary systems talked about. I don't believe, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, that was one of them.
I don't believe so, but yeah, but that's something we need to double check, and that's
Yeah.
one of the items to circle back with Coloradoan is the sole source letters or less than 3 sole source letters to make sure that all that's incorporated in that effort.
Yeah, and that brings up another thing I wanted to mention about the switchgear. Square D or Schneider is the basis of design. ABB, which is really GE, and Eaton are the 2 other manufacturers. And talking to a couple of electricians that done a few switchgear jobs with, they're adamant about opening the spec up to Siemens as well. One contractor in particular has installed some gear from Siemens on 2 different school projects in Connecticut over the last 6 to 12 months and had really good luck with them. So just something to keep in mind. We'll be reaching out to Justin and KR about that as well. See if we can open it up, and if they have any reservations, to see if we can get by that.
Got it. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. Number 6, OPM. Adam, you're up. You're gonna earn your money today here, huh?
I'll start off with a high-level overview of just schedule. Now that we've gotten into sort of the meat and potatoes of finalizing the documents with the phase 1 package, I wanted to give the committee the kind of regroup on what's coming up down the line in terms of committee approvals, state approvals, packaging, pricing, all that good stuff. So I'll share my screen here. So just as a retrospective on July, Justin touched on basically all the points here in terms of some of the stakeholder meetings and at the July 24th phase 1 package issued for review. So moving into August, again, we've got wetlands and PZC. Those should be fairly straightforward. We still have a number of let's call it cleanup design related meetings to go through. At the end of the week, we have a lengthier meeting for a page turn with the school administration, just to go over final details, make sure all the rooms are situated the way they need to be, millwork, all that good stuff, kind of getting ironed out those last minute details at the end of the week. In terms of the school building committee and the phase 2 packaging, the next meeting we have will be a discussion of phase 1 after we've gotten through some of the details that Nick just ironed out, as well as the estimate, the cost estimate, and in general what the package looks like. So there won't be necessarily a decision for the school building committee on that meeting. There will be a decision that will need to be made on third-party reviewers, both the third-party code reviewer and the independent structural reviewer. Those RFPs are about to close this week. I've gotten one response so far, but basically it'll be a selection process. So I'll have the matrix of all the fees and scopes and who's recommended as a viable candidate. We obviously, for this type of technical review, there aren't interviews or a whole big review process necessarily. So it should be something that the committee can review and vote on within one meeting. And that'll be important because as soon as the phase 2 package comes out later that week, those reviewers get started on their review right away to be concurrent with the town's building official and state fire marshal reviews in order to basically do the lion's share of the work on doing code compliance. As you can imagine, the town of Madison staff are pretty busy as is, and they can't just all of a sudden stop what they're doing to go review this enormous document set for a major building. So that's why there's third-party reviewers brought in to go through and make sure all the code compliance measures are incorporated in the drawings. But again, this is in August, the key date, so to speak, is this 25th, when the phase 2 main construction package is targeted to be issued. And then as Seth alluded to, on the 22nd, there's the Board of Education meeting to get their recommendations on the value engineering, as well as just briefly broach the phase 1 package as an introduction. I'll talk about September, then I'll pause for a moment to see if there's any questions. But for September, as part of the packaging, there are a number of approvals that need to be made as part of the state process. In addition to the local building official and state fire marshal and all those technical reviews, there are a number of administrative sign-offs that need to be made as well. Most pertinently for this group is the school building committee and the Board of Education. Board of Education confirming that the project is in line with the education specifications, and the school building committee obviously are the ones in responsible charge of the project. So Graham and Seth would be signing off the forms before we're allowed to go to bid with the state. So to that point, there may be some potential special meetings in September, and then I'll show again in October and November to shift things around in order to give the approvals in a reasonable order. So for example, we may want to have a potential special meeting for the school building committee on September 1st to get this group sign off. And then that way on the 5th at the Board of Education meeting, that group can sign off as well. Again, having everyone will have seen the documents in advance, but just in terms of scheduling and memorializing those approvals, we may need to shift some of the meetings around here or there to make the timing work. And then the big state meeting right now has been scheduled for September 13th. And it's at that meeting where they'll review the phase 1 package, go through. We've had some initial discussions with the state, and they didn't seem to take exception to the notion of an early release package. It's just a matter of getting all the documents in front of them. And then after this meeting is when, assuming all is well, the state will give the town of Madison permission to go forward to bid under the grant process. So that's this September 13th meeting is key in order to release the process forward and get out to bid. And then after this meeting, it usually takes a week or two to get the documents up. And so as you can kind of see here in October, I didn't put it on here, but that's about the time frame we would put that phase 1 package out on the street, end of September, early October, to get that moving. Any questions on phase 1? Just have kind of gone through that. All right. So that phase 2 package that I mentioned, that's the main construction package coming here at the end of August. That will go through 3 and 4 weeks of reviews by you all, by town staff, by the third party code reviewers, et cetera, as we usually do. And at the end of September is when we'll have our estimate reconciliation and our comments due from the parties. So right around here at the end of September, we'll get a sense of what the updated reconciled CD estimate is. And from there, obviously, we'd go through value engineering and value management. And again, in a minute here, I'll talk about some of the items that have been discussed already as part of the EVM going into the CD package estimate. In October is when things get busy with meetings and approvals. Again, there's the potential for having some special meetings for the school building committee to look at VE. So dependent upon what the value that's needed to be taken is, dependent upon how involved it is, we may want to shift a meeting or two around in order to authorize taking some of those value engineering items and then ultimately formally approving the phase 2 package. Again, same thing as with phase 1, this group signs off on the phase 2 package and Graham signs off on it on the state form. And similarly, the Board of Education needs to sign off on it. So there'd be an introductory meeting at the Board of Education on the 17th. And then something that's just been very early broached is there may be the need for a potential special meeting for Board of Education to get that sign off as well from that group. Again, we're a few months out from there, but this is just kind of planting the seeds. So that way we're not caught behind the 8 ball on 2 weeks waiting for a meeting in order to get things signed off. Once all that's done, the group can also look at, maybe we can potentially cancel a meeting here or two to make up for the additional special meetings. But I should say phase 2 PCR meeting, but ultimately the phase 2 PCR meeting would be scheduled for early in November, and then targeting going out to bid end November, early December for the phase 2 package. and we'd likely get bids sometime in the late December, January, something like that timeframe. And that's when the real number will come in, is to, you know, we're not dealing with estimates. This is what the bidders are saying the cost of the project is. Any questions on any of that? Again, no action item for the group right now. Just wanted to kind of lay out the roadmap as we get into a lot of the nitty gritty meetings and approvals, and trying to keep phase 1 and phase 2 straight. It can be a little difficult. So, any questions?
Yeah, great job. By the way, the November 7th, the potential Board of Ed special meeting, I think that's an election, so that you might move that off that particular
Yeah,
date.
fair enough. That's just a placeholder around that time frame.
Yeah.
We'll work on something that makes sense.
Exactly, yeah. Not a big deal. Okay. Great job. I'm sure everyone has that committed to memory, and we'll be doing a test.
I'm sure. I'll
lot of detail there, but I appreciate having you figure that out. That is quite a Swiss watch of dates. So much appreciated, all that hard work. Does anyone have any questions for Adam? What we've got ahead of us in the next 3 months? Hope no one was planning any vacation time or anything like that over the next 2 or 3 months. Okay, so that's overall budget. I guess I see 6A was an overall budget update.
Yeah,
Talk
so
about that.
you kind of let it off with the 2.4 being voted down at the town meeting. Just to remind the group, and so that way it's in the meeting here, that the overall budget overrun that was identified at design development was approximately 5.9 million after the value engineering, after the alternates. I think it was like 5.88. And so the numbers that were often associated with that 5.9 million were 3.5 million coming from referendum shifting of money, and then this 2.4 to make up the rest of the delta. And that 2.4 was generally aligned with the added costs, so to speak, associated with those additional classrooms. In general, it's just the remaining portion of the overage, but that was where those numbers came from. So the 3.5 was already shifted, and that's been moved. But right now, but based on the overall project schedule, obviously the phase 1 package has already been issued. Phase 2 package is, coming right down the barrel here in a couple of weeks. So they're, in terms of stopping the process or stopping design, as Justin alluded to, the design documents are being worked on and finished as is, in terms of keep continuing to have those 4 classrooms and move forward with the value engineering that had already been taken at design development. So nothing has stopped because the vote came in not favorably to the project. The phase 1 early procurement package, obviously I mentioned it's been developed and is being estimated and reviewed, and bids are coming in, would come in assuming approval by the state in October, November timeframe. So there is no contract to be signed or anything to be any risk to be taken on until that time when the contract is ready in November. But that's a point that will be discussed with town leadership and just in general in these committee meetings. The phase 1 package represents a chunk of money for scope that the town is effectively taking on at risk, because you'd be signing that contract for the work before you know what the whole dollar value is for the whole project. So if the project came in at some ridiculous number, $100 million, and the town said, whoa, we're not going to move forward with the school project, it will have already purchased the DOAS unit and the switch gears and whatnot. So there's a bit of business risk, if you will, associated with the phase 1 contract. In terms of the, I mentioned the design team is proceeding with the CD document completion, but in the interim time, because there's this $2.4 million gap that was hoped to be closed by the added funds. One of the things is that Tecton and Gilbane and Colliers reviewed, just where we're at with the process in terms of design and what things can we get a jump on for value engineering and value management to help expedite closing the gap. And while we don't have $2.4 million identified as of today in terms of what can be done. And it may not be just as simple as taking $2.4 million of the value engineering. The building already has been pretty well simplified during schematic design and design development. There are still some items that were targeted that we're looking at. Things like landscaping and pavers, re-looking at some of the soil off-haul and re-looking at the geotech and how those values are carried in the bidding. Again, materiality is always an item that's looked at in terms of exterior doors or some of the wall coverings and the extent of those items. The facade design that was taken, the value engineering and sort of the reshifting of some of the facade elements as Tecton's going through the finalization of those items. We need to make sure that there's not double counting of vertical shades or things of that nature in the estimate to make sure that those values are captured appropriately. The code modifications Justin mentioned, and particularly the area calculation for the firewall might lend some savings because we don't have to build a CME wall in the middle of the building. And geothermal wells, since design development, we've gotten the initial or gotten the reports for the conductivity testing. So Cole-Ronan is looking to confirm the number of wells. The initial take was that it wouldn't be going higher, but they want to see if there's a well or two or three that can be reduced to still meet the building performance based on the conductivity that was measured in the field. So there's some potential savings there. And in general, there's also some document, as I call them, document related savings that may be gleaned by looking at the overall budget allocation. And what I mean by that is, for example, we have some consultant services for the Ryerson demolition in the soft costs. And the general notion was that the Ryerson demolition was not part of the overall cost estimates and base scope, but it would be potentially reevaluated during construction if there were, a bunch of funds available and that scope wanted to move forward. So if the project decided to forego Ryerson altogether, we won't explore it later, we're not going to potentially have the consultant services, we might be able to shift that $150,000 budget line item up to construction. So some of that shifting of money where there's no change in scope, it's just taking a sharper pencil to some of the budget line items and reallocating might help with close that gap deficit as well. So again, these things I mentioned are still a little preliminary, and some of them may not come to fruition. Some of them might be quite lucrative and a good way forward for closing the budget gap. But point being is that the project team hasn't stopped in any way, shape, or form because of the $2.4 million vote. But there is some work to be done, and there is some discussions with town leadership as to what the overall makeup of closing this $2.4 million gap is before we move forward with final approvals and bidding and whatnot. Any questions on that? Don't look so excited when I'm going and talking about some viewpoints here, guys.
I have a quick question regarding Ryerson. So there's a way we don't have to, I thought that was part of the project or the overall referendum was to take it down. And you insinuated that would be something we could take out of the scope or
so
not.
I'll let Graham add to it, but
Yeah, so I get-
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the desire of the selectmen to have us included in this project. If, before we take any other bid alternates, we may not be able to take any anyway. But that was kind of moved off budget, but it was, I don't know if it was explicitly in the referendum. I believe there's a perception that was part of the project. So the intent of the government is to still demolish it. Some of it's whether we do it as, within this project or other projects within the referendum.
Okay.
Adam's specifically talking about $150,000 in consulting fees we have allocated that we could free up. It's just part of our, the methods we might try to close the budget if, on bid day we're over.
Okay, so it's basically just shuffling funds around between the projects within the scope of the referendum.
Right, it's currently not in our estimate, but it's intended, I think it was intended to be part of the overall referendum, even if it wasn't listed. And Adam, I think I don't think it was on the referendum call, but I don't know if it was included in any of the presentations made by the Board of Ed leading up to the referendum.
The documents, obviously I can't speak to every document that has ever existed, but the two that I'll point to is the referendum verbiage that I saw didn't explicitly cite Ryerson as, it's not like it was New Elementary School, Bryan, Polson, and also Ryerson demolition. There was in some early budget documents a line item for Ryerson demolition. And I think that's what a lot of people see and refer back to was a line item, but there was also line items for other ports that aren't in the project, just because it was an early tabulation of how the overall budget figure was developed, more so that than like I said, referendum verbiage saying thou shalt do Ryerson or demolish Ryerson. So that's that budget line item is, I think, what a lot of people had in back of mind. But the budget line item also said, septic treatment plant, and the project doesn't have a septic treatment plant in it because it wasn't.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
Got it. Thanks, Adam. Any other questions for Adam? So we've got the design team and Adam and the CM team have their work cut out for us, and hopefully whether we can close the entire 2.4, on paper heading up to it. Obviously everyone's going to do their possible best. We have to plan on that the classrooms are going to stay in, because right now to make that assumption, the otherwise is going to revisit the schedule. If it's later determined that that's not the case, then we're going to have to put our heads back together and refigure the schedule. But as you see, the schedule is very complicated, and it's hard to stop the machine running.
It's tight. If the town decides to, at August 22nd, for example, take out the 4 classrooms after Tecton is only a couple days away from finalizing the documents with the classrooms in, that will be a significant blow to the project schedule, and we'd have to evaluate if staying on schedule is even practical at that point.
Well, wouldn't it be a blow to the budget too? We'd have to pay them extra services for changing things, wouldn't we?
I'm
just saying. I mean, if I were the architects and they changed the scope on me, I'd want to get paid. So I would want to have my original budget. So I mean, it's kind of
understood.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. We're going to keep them in. I mean, come on, that's just silly at this point. So.
Yeah, we're just sensitive to the perception of the voters in the public meeting. So I don't want to assume anything that, and we do want to talk to bond counsel, but you're right. I mean, the schedule, it is hard to turn the ship that quickly. And there would be ramifications, which we're going to look at over the next couple of weeks before we do anything like that. And I think I see George's hands up. George?
Yeah, just a point, Adam. Thanks for that good summary there. We're kind of, being that town meeting didn't pass, we're kind of at a point where, we got to be careful we don't gut the building, obviously, from anything good, which kind of goes to your point. But we have a large FF&E budget, right? So I'm not saying we need to get into strategies here, but we can move money around in this budget as we need to. I'm not saying we're going to use 2.4 million of that thing, but there are other pots of money here. This is, we have some allocated for construction, but not, there's other monies in this project, so we don't have to necessarily pare the building down to, to skin and bone, so to speak, which I know was kind of part of what you were alluding to.
Yeah, and that's what Colliers was looking at. Something like FF&E, I would be hesitant to touch, because it's a scope that needs to be developed after we're already set with the construction budget. So it's not like, we're going to be able to chop, 200 grand off the FF&E budget by buying cheaper chairs. That scope is going to come in, potentially after vendor pricing increases and who knows what goes on. So just that's limitedly to the point of FF&E, but exactly to your point, George, the identification of where the money is allocated just in that initial budget and sharpening the pencil to identify if there's anything that the town wishes to shift up to construction. That's an exercise that could yield some good dividends in terms of budget management.
Sure. Yeah, I think my point or my recommendation is that, we got to have a building that has some substance to it, obviously. If all 4 of those classrooms aren't being used next year, maybe we don't buy furniture for them, I mean, that's kind of a very basic view, but I'm just trying to say we kind of staff and furnish this building as needed, certainly to make it work. But if this is going to be 10 years before there's if this building is fully utilized or whatever, then that's something we have in our pocket that we can use as needed for funding sources, that kind of thing. And again, I'm not trying to, I am hanging on FF&E, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying in the grand scheme of things, I'd rather see a usable, solid building rather than something that's just been pared down to, a rectangular box with 4 windows, like the way I would design it. But, but that's not right for the town.
Yeah, well put, George. Yeah. I mean, the irony is that we potentially, we did get $6 million more in reimbursement from the state, and we're probably or likely, hopefully going to get $3 million more back, from the federal government for rebates. So, or whatever you want to call them, pseudo tax credits. So ironically, we have $9 million to the good, but we just can't use that to defer the cost of the project to pay for that. So the town will take advantage of reduced bonding. It just doesn't flow back into this project, ironically. So I think that's Adam, is that
That's all I've got.
like I said, you earned your money today, Adam. I'll tell Chuck. It's a lot of work. Thank you. So I see last item is the public comment. Well, let me double back to Seth. Now that you're one of us, Seth, do you have anything you want to add, big picture wise after?
No, I would just underscore the fact that the early budget documents that led to the formulation of the bonding package that we sought, that was put to the voters, did include a line item for the raising of Ryerson. So, I do know that the popular opinion is mounting among, the other town boards, including the Board of Ed, that if possible, I mean, obviously we need those 4 classrooms, but if possible, with money left over, we would need to really consider, and it's not a Board of Ed thing, because the Board of Ed hands the keys over to the town, and the town has to determine what to do with the building. But, I'm just adding my understanding from talking with other town leaders, that they are looking to include the destruction of Ryerson as part of this, so that we don't end up with another academy school situation for 20 years. But that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's always a question, what do you do with the extra building? So
Couldn't we use the rebate money to take Ryerson down when it comes back to us?
that's a question for bond counsel. I mean, I guess you're right, whether if it wasn't explicitly in the referendum call, whether we could use that money, through the capital account. I mean, as everyone knows, or most people know, we have an unfunded balance of $20 million. Again, we just can't use it. It's really more some of the nuance of, referendum law and things like that. But yeah, that's definitely a scenario. But yeah, Peggy's made it very clear that she wants it included in the demolition of Ryerson, so it doesn't become a nuisance.
Gotcha.
Down the road. I mean, we found a buyer for Island Avenue, luckily, but that's unlikely to be duplicated. Again, that was kind of a one-shot deal, I think. So. Okay. Raquel, any other public? Anyone else?
Yes, Tim has his hand raised.
Okay. If you could put Tim through.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that, guys. I've never joined a Zoom town meeting like this. So thank you very much for letting me say my piece, as I had a lot of things or questions to ask, but it seemed like everyone kind of did their part and answered a lot of them. But I guess I wanted to ask, unfortunately, I'm a little late to the party, so I wasn't really even aware that the vote that I don't want to say we, but was not in favor of seemingly the current project that you guys have put together. And I was just kind of interested in finding out ways that, as the public, it seemed to me just by looking through it, that those that were not in favor must have seemingly been maybe more organized, because it was so one-sided as far as the amount of people that were not for it versus against it. So as someone that is for the project and wants to see the school created right, lifelong Madison resident, Daniel Hand graduate, I walked the halls at the new high school. My father was a Board of Ed member for 15 years and still talks about what a crying shame it is that the high school is not where Allison Drive is. And it's something that he just kicks himself every day for. I know a couple of committee members mentioned it. I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but mentioned, we want this school to be something that we're proud of. I don't want to offend anyone that loves it. We don't want another cafetorium situation on our hands like we have at Daniel Hand High School. So, I guess I'm looking to help out in any way. I know one man necessarily can't always make a difference, but I'm just interested in hearing more about kind of what the plans are going to be, because I don't want to see less classrooms. I don't want to see, let's just make it less. Let's get rid of the landscaping. Let's cut here. Let's cut there because we have to do it. It sounds like this group doesn't want to do those things. Everyone has the best interests for the town in mind and wants the school to be something that we can all be proud of and send our kids to. As I have two kids that hopefully will be attending the school when it opens. And I guess I just wanted to get your take on how, we as members of the town that maybe weren't aware of this vote that took place, how we can help in the future, or if there's other opportunities to kind of close that gap without having to sacrifice quality, if that makes sense. So I appreciate you guys giving me a second.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah. And 2020 hindsight is wonderful. And probably, I probably would have done things a little differently in hindsight, but you can't go back, and the public has spoken, and you can't, unfortunately, you can't necessarily get a redo, but we're going to do everything possible to deliver the best possible school. And
maybe what we need is somebody to do public relations for the committee. I mean, I'm seriously, is there, it's probably not in the budget, but if there's a town member who'd like to volunteer, maybe that's what we need, is someone who to put out articles that are actually correct, and notices about meetings and what they're about and what we're trying to do. Maybe there's an article every week that we put out, or as a committee, to inform the town what we're doing and why we're doing it and why we're approaching it the way we are.
Well, there was an op-ed piece that was put in the newspaper a few days before, I think by Peggy, which I don't know the source, which I thought was well done, but it is.
But it was buried because it wasn't then shared very well on social media. And Ben Rainier at the source is more than happy to talk to you, Graham, whenever you're willing to talk to him. I've had the conversation with him in the past when I was talking to him about something else. It's us being willing to put information out there to those sources, and then the town communicators to be willing and timely in their sharing of that information, so it goes beyond the pages of the paper.
Agreed. And I actually did reach out to Ben and say, call me if you need any, after the meeting, if you wanted to talk to me about, make sure the story got out correctly. But it's not going to change the vote at this point, unfortunately. That's the reality of the town meeting form of government. But I appreciate your input. And actually, I was on that original building committee that got the high school building that was defeated 20 odd years ago. And I feel your pain, but that was the, it came back and it was a $40 million project, and that was the reality of it. And the building committee, I go on the record, the building committee did a great job. The second building committee did a great job delivering the project on time and on budget. Unfortunately, their hands were somewhat limited by what the budget was, but they, it's the reality of that's what the town wanted. And the town voted not to build a $50 million high school, to build a $40 million high school, and that's what got approved and built, and the building committee, delivered that. Unfortunately, hindsight, I would have been thrilled if it went on Allison Drive, unfortunately, where Allison Drive is today, but that's
If you guys need anybody, you can bring it up and say, see, if we don't do it right, we're going to end up with guys like this, with graduates from hand like this guy. So maybe we should open our pockets here.
We wouldn't want to miss that.
Exactly. So
it's a scary tale. Yeah.
There you go.
And you move back
Again,
to
I
town.
appreciate it.
And you move back to town. You're one of the few.
Yeah. No, I've been here for
The whole time?
7 years now. After I graduated in 08, and been here pretty much ever since. And looking to I got 2 kids, like I said, looking to have them come up in a school that we can be proud of, and and not let people that, well, we don't need to speak towards it, but someone that may not spend all their time here speak for the people that send their kids here and help the economy and help grow the town and care about the town. And just looking for that. So
Well, I appreciate your input, and we'll do our best. We may need to reach out to you.
yeah,
So,
hey,
thanks,
like I
Dave.
said, happy to do anything. Thanks, guys.
Okay, yeah. My daughter probably says hi. I think you graduated my daughter, Jen Curtis, in 2008.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did peer helpers together, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I can't get her to move back to Madison though. She's in Massachusetts, unfortunately. But I keep talking it up. But
We get
Just like
this
it-
school going, and she might come
yeah,
back.
exactly. Yeah. Well, she doesn't have kids yet, so that's why. Once she has kids, she'll be back, I'm sure.
There you go. Bingo.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Tim. Well, it's hard to top that as our any more public. So Raquel, I assume that was
Yes, that was it.
okay, great. Any comments, any further comments from the building committee? Anything like to add?
Gee, Graham, only that we really ought to think about or try to figure out a way to get some of that money that's coming to us that we can't use, used in other portions of the project. I don't know, something like what George said, FF&E or something like that.
Yeah, we'll investigate all those possibilities. Yeah, and
Yeah.
money coming, admittedly, whether we can, it really is up to the legal opinion about, if we
Naturally,
use it to offset some of the money on Paulson or other projects down the road. I mean, it's a good problem to have that we have that money coming, but we're gonna
not
do
if we
everything
can't
can.
use it.
Yeah, well, them's the breaks. So the
Yep.
public has spoken, I respect the public, and they have every right to express their opinion. God bless them. That's a democracy, and I was glad to see there was a turnout, even though maybe it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to see. It's people have a right to voice their opinion in a town meeting form of government. So God bless them all. So would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? I see Sharon has
I'll
Made the
do
mo-
that.
okay.
I'll second.
What do you second? Okay, thank you, everybody. Take care. Thank you.